Your work here, this conversation, this question and answer period. We ask for the presence of your Holy Spirit, that you would guide and direct not only the answers but the questions. We thank you for the time we've spent together this day. We ask that you bind these thoughts off in this final meeting in Jesus' name. Amen. Are these new questions or old questions? I guess I'll find out.
I think there may be a mixture of both.
Yep. Okay, I've answered this question a little bit, but I'll read it and then restate it. Jeff, can you please describe the events that took place in Arkansas in October, Tessa's studies, and how the class came to conclude that Raffia is November 9, 2019. Did Sister Tess not know the date before she presented her studies in Arkansas? If you remember, I've answered that one.
Yeah.
She knew it, but before she was ready to state it, the class had recognized it, and at the end of one of the classes, I don't know if it ever got put on the internet, because it was at the end of a class, we all went up to the board and identified it ourselves while she was there, and it was put in place for the class right then and there from then on. Pardon me? Yeah. On the midnight cry, when there are many angels, is there going to be a time when all the multiple messages in our movement become one distinct message? I think they are one distinct message now, for myself. I view what Theodore put in place as a second witness, that right. I'll tell you about Theodore. Theodore came down to Arkansas, he and his wife, and they spent a trimester. I'd known him anyway from interacting with him in Canada and on the internet for a few years. And he and his wife came and spent a trimester at the school once, some time ago, and then I went up to Canada this last time, and he was there. And the first time he was there, there's a brother that goes to Lambert Church with us, that was in a real poor state of affairs. He had just dealt with throat cancer. He dealt with initially through natural remedies, and then determined the only thing he could really get resolved is his radiation. And he knew when he started the radiation treatment, they told him out front, you know, you're going to have like 6 weeks of treatment or whatever, and the last couple of weeks you're going to be really sick, needing help. And right at the point in time where that was taking place, his wife, out of the clear blue sky, gave him divorce papers. So he was divorced, he was sick, he was out of work. His wife was moving him out of his home into an older home that he had on a different piece of property. But when Theodore had been there, he'd made friends with him. So when I was in Canada, Theodore knew about this brother's situation. They had become friends, and he told me that this brother had invited him to come down there and help him remodel this new house that he was moving into. And I said, well, do you have the abilities to remodel a house? And he said, yes, he did. So anyway, that's why he got invited down to Arkansas. He did not get invited down to teach or to speak at the camp meeting. He ended up teaching and speaking at the camp meeting, but only really because our ministry did not have a legal way to pay him any money. To pay someone from out of the country actually on a payroll, then you're going to have to go through the visa process. We weren't going to do that, but we could legally pay for his transportation cost if we had him teach or speak at the camp meeting. A person can receive reimbursement for travel expenses without any income tax implications. So I told him if he wanted to come down there and help this brother, that we would help with his transportation expenses because he didn't have any money at that time, Theodore. So that's why Theodore ended up down there, and he went down there to help this brother, and he's on the scene when Tess begins to share, and he's got this second witness in place. So I'm just telling you this because it was the Lord's providence that he was there, and he was there to show November 9th, 2019 from a different direction, right on the right point in time to put a second witness into it. But also at that point in time there was personalities around that started being, appeared to be kind of jealous. Well, isn't Tess's message the message of the midnight cry, and you know, who's Theodore, and these kind of things. So there's a little bit of that humanity coming out in people, and everyone worked through that. But the point is if anyone's been led to believe that because I'm making a reference to Theodore's calendars that this is the midnight cry message, that isn't how I would express it. And I said it here more than once. November 9th, 2019, as is the midnight cry message, and we arrive at this understanding from Tessa's light on these Pyrrhus wars and the 4 elephants, and that I believe is the message. And if you had to spend your, I think I've said in here once, if you have to spend your time studying something, that's where to be studying. But for years, I'm saying it again, and this is the question here, I have pointed out, not in a big way, but I pointed out when Sister White describes the midnight cry, there's many angels, not just one. And we know in this movement that angels represent several things. They can represent angels, they can represent the message, they can represent messengers, they can represent the people of God. So recently I heard Parminder a couple times even point that truth out, that when it comes to the midnight cry there are more than one angel. So you haven't seen yet. Tomorrow, Lord willing, I'll give you at least an overview of the line of the General Conference presidents and the presidents of the United States. While we were in Canada connecting with Theodore, one of the main people in Tabo's little church family where he's at is a brother named
Colin.
what?
Colin.
Colin, good for you. And he'd done a study on the presidents and the General Conference presidents. And a year or two before, if everyone know who's Conard and Teon are?
Yeah.
Okay, when Conard and Teon were at the School of the Prophets in Arkansas, we had a class one morning, and at the end of the class, I forget how we just in a kind of a group conversation, we began discussing, it seems like there might be a parallel between the General Conference presidents, the presidents of the United States, and the kings of Israel and Judah. And we began brainstorming right away. We could see some really profound connections there in a short period of time. But that was the same point in time when the parting of the ways with Conard and Teon and our ministry was about to take place. So what I'm saying is long before I went to Canada last time, that thought had arrived. And then when I was in Canada with Tabo, Colin said he wanted to show me something, and when he showed me, he had this information together about the General Conference presidents and the presidents, and it was like I didn't need a great deal of explanation because I'd already worked through the logic, and from there Tabo and I were heading to Africa. Okay, so I told Colin, give me a copy of your notes. I want a copy of your notes. And he went and made a copy of the notes he had, his working copy. And I think probably a little bit of it was that my enthusiasm to get the notes spurred Tabo to take that. And when Tabo and Kathy and I were in Africa, that's what he was sharing, was these presidents. But when we got over there to Zimbabwe, Tabo was speaking, I was speaking, and maybe 2 other brothers were speaking, Blessing and maybe Nyasha, but I know Blessing was. But Blessing gets up there, a guy in Zimbabwe, in this camp meeting, and he begins to share the presidents and the General Conference president, and according to him, in Zimbabwe, they've come to this understanding independent of anyone else. So it had popped up in Canada after it popped up in the School of the Prophets. Tabo's going to Africa thinking this is what he's going to share, and we get to Zimbabwe and they're sharing it. So the reason I'm saying that is that I think that this history of the General Conference of Presidents and Presidents, it intersects with this history of Raphia to Panium in a way that contributes to the message of the Midnight Cry, if we're going to label that as Tessa. So I personally am seeing someone like Theodore right on the scene when it takes place to give a second witness, okay? No, you are crazy to doubt November 9th, 2019 because you've seen enough of it with Tess that you could come to the conclusion without her even saying what it was. And as soon as you accepted that light, the Lord say, hey, by the way, here's another way to nail down November 9th. And then the floodgates are open on that. And then at the same time, there's other little truths that are coming about that are, I just say, strengthening that message. And to me, that's an agreement with, that's proof that it's the Midnight Cry message. Because you have now, it's a single message. It's the Midnight Cry message. But you have many angels that are coming, many lines of truth that are coming together to strengthen the overall message. And the overall message to me is that it's really solemn, it's really scary that in 11 months, if we don't die before, our probation comes to a conclusion. That's my answer to that question. I don't expect the Midnight Cry message to be a singular message. It's going to be a singular message, but it's going to be supported with many supports.
Is the message of the president reach the point, the date of the same date, November 9, 2019?
They don't really produce dates. What they do is they add to the history that we're identifying that's going to take place in 2020 with these election cycles and then go into 2021. They're just lines over the top that are filling out the picture. They're filling in the gaps. And there was a person teaching at the school here recently, right up till when we left, and I had an interaction with them. And they were teaching that, I don't know if they were teaching this. In fact, after I had some interaction with them, they pretty much denied they were teaching this. But what I'm going to say is I'm pretty sure they were putting this emphasis on it. That the only thing we're supposed to be looking at now is November 9th, 2019. And their logic is that that's the truth that we have to settle into, that we got to get straight, because that's everything right now. That's the close of our probation. And when someone says that to me, I say, amen. I believe that. But if the Lord needs me to see some things in beyond November 9th, 2019, in order to cement my understanding to the point to where I won't be shaken out, then who am I to restrict the Lord from giving me that light? I don't know if this is the right word, but I don't know that message should make us myopic, where it's myopic where you only see one little thing. Okay. But I'm open for correction. I think I'm through, unless there's some. Oh, these are different questions. That one's to me, but the next one I'm almost certainly going to be for you. Okay, I probably said the second question more than you, but this is your concept more than mine. Now this is a similar thought. You could probably do as part of it. Okay, I'm going to answer mine first, because after I answer mine, then I should be able to just go out in the audience next to Kathy and listen to him take up the final questions. Okay? This is Jeff. Why is the message of Fatima so important to Tessa's message, the Midnight Cry? Okay, so I don't have the intellectual point of reference to really answer that. Okay. What I do have is this. None of you were probably, other than maybe Parminder, Manjit, maybe, and my wife, and Aaron, maybe. But most of you weren't around during the time period that I was just out there sharing Daniel 11:40 to 45, and that was the only thing that I was sharing, until further light came. But I did that for years and years. And when I would do Daniel 11 verse 40, and I agree with what he's been saying here, Daniel 11 verse 40, there was a point in time where we realized the entire Bible is illustrated in verses 40 to 45. But now you can realize that almost the entire Bible is verse 40. There's still some after verse 40, but it isn't much. Almost the entire Word of God is in verse 40. But we didn't realize that back in the history that I was talking about. And when I would do Daniel 11 verse 40, if it was necessary, I could do 5 to 10 hours on verse 40, no sweat. And so, in that time period, how many of you know about the white buffalo? Raise your hand. Okay, so too many of you know it for me to tell it. But there was a period of time when the Lord opened up spiritual manifestations that were going on in the domain of the beast, the domain of the dragon, and the domain of the false prophet. And he opened it up, and I was sharing it in connection with Revelation 16. And in that time frame, what was happening on planet Earth is that they were having apparitions of Mary all over the world. And because I knew that the message of Fatima was what was directing Pope John Paul II, who was the Pope during that time period, I got entrenched in the messages of Fatima, the apparitions of Mary. I have a section in my bookcase that's at least this wide that just deals with the apparitions of Mary and Mariology and that kind of stuff. So I haven't handled that stuff for decades, many, many years. So one of the reasons for me that Tessa's messages of Fatima was so important, and my wife could give testimony to this, is when Tess started into her presentation in Arkansas, I'm sitting back there with Kathy saying, wow, do you remember? Do you remember? It's what we were teaching way back when, and no one said a word about it since then, okay? It's blowing our mind. So for us, those presentations are connecting with us in a way that it wouldn't connect with most other people. But back in that time period, we came to understand, based upon Revelation 16, that out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, there are spirits that come out like frogs. And there's a quote where Sister Wright says, in connection with this, that the frogs representing overspreading of the land. Therefore, the spirits that come out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, they're going to come out across the whole world from these three entities, and they're going to go forth to the kings of the earth, and they're going to bring the kings of the earth to Armageddon. So we were understanding that there was a spiritual influence that was coming out of Catholicism, apostate Protestantism, and spiritualism that was destined to lead the world to the close of human probation. And it was the messages of Fatima that were guiding the Catholic Church's activities in that regard. That's why we were looking at them. So when you are looking at Tessa's material and you're looking at the struggle between the king of the north and the king of the south, even though it's the proxy for the king of the north is the United States, which we would call the king of the north, would it be valid to say that the proxy for the papacy in this struggle is the United States? Okay, they're still, whether Trump understands it or not, the puppet master behind the scene is the Catholic Church, and Catholic Church is essentially being guided by the messages of Fatima. Now, that's at a very simplistic level, because the messages of Fatima say that the Catholic Church is divided into two factions, and depending on which faction you're in is how you interpret, how you accept or take direction from the messages of Fatima. But if you're going to understand the relationship, the struggle between the king of the south and the king of the north, then if you're going to take in the light on the spiritualistic influence that's directing the papacy, then I think you are better off, better prepared to understand that if you understand the role of the messages of Fatima that came into history the same month, the same year that the modern king of the south began its role, way back in the beginning of the 20th century. But I don't know about all the implications of how Tess teaches it. Okay, you have the rest of them?
Some of the questions that I've got here are a bit, they're not straightforward. I'm going to do my best to answer some of them. The first question was, do we need to be rebaptised before the close of probation? So I don't know whose question that is. They're willing to. So I guess I would ask you or anybody who's asking a similar question. When a person comes to the conviction of desiring rebaptism, I guess like the Ethiopian eunuch, they don't say, how long can I wait, or how long do I need to delay for? They want it straight away. So at one level, the question that I would sort of ask back is, whether it was before or after close of probation, why would a person delay when they're under conviction that they need to be rebaptised and that they feel that they're ready? So it shouldn't be, in that sense, constrained by a set date, November the 9th, 2019, as an example. We should be seeking rebaptism if that's where we think the Lord is leading us tomorrow, straight away. There shouldn't be a delay, like, let's do it within a certain time frame. Sorry?
I thought it takes preparation, like, you know, for the leaders and for...
Yeah, but it takes preparation, but rebaptism has been, at least in the consciousness of a number of people in the movement, for 15 months. We could argue 2 years, really, depending on how we want to look at it. But people might say, well, I never knew about that. Certainly people knew 6-7 months ago that from June 2018 in Italy, people got rebaptised, and since then it's come to the consciousness of everybody in this movement. So the question is, why would people not be making that preparation now anyway? So I understand the question, but I just want to respond to say that we should all be getting or desiring rebaptism, well, I mean tomorrow at the earliest opportunity. Now, that is dependent upon a person's understanding of what they're actually getting baptised into and what those doctrines that they're assenting to is. And that may indeed take a bit of time. So I think people should, the focus to say we've got this window of opportunity to get baptised, I'm not sure if convincing it's the right way of approaching the problem, because we should all be desiring baptism as soon as possible, unless there's some moral reason or some doctrinal reason that we don't agree, that we have trouble. Having said that, should we be getting baptised before close of probation? For certain, because afterwards it's a bit late, really. If you're a priest, I'm not sure what statement you're making to get baptised after the close of probation if you're here asking this question.
I think I would just probably be cautious.
Because of...
Just overall, like, you know, I thought that there probably would be a baptism at this
I don't think they've got the facility here, from what my understanding was. And also, I'm not sure if we've had baptismal classes here in the UK.
but then again, you're only coming back in May, aren't you, or something like that, or June?
It's a problem. I'm not arguing that it's not a problem, but I'm saying there's two things. Person's desire to be baptised should be straight away, and the other one is, to answer your question directly, yes, people should. There's no reason why we should not be being baptised before or after. There's no reason why we shouldn't be baptised before the close of probation. Afterwards, it's too late. Because what statement are we making to say, well, wait till after the close of probation to be baptised? Baptism is part of the testing process that we're required to pass, and probation means to be tested. So when the testing finishes next year, if you haven't been baptised, you've failed the test, really, I would suggest.
I'm just going to the other side, like if it gets too busy and someone could only get baptised after.
We always have this problem. If someone desires to be baptised and they're not able to, through no fault of their own, that's a separate issue. That's something that the Lord has to deal with. But the context of this question isn't that. I don't think. If you were looking to get married, you'd be willing to spend a few £1,000s to do that. And if someone was desperate enough, especially in this country, to get baptised, and there's no one here, they can go to a place to get baptised. It's not beyond people's ability to do that if they view baptism as a life and death issue. Because we all travel around, and going to Europe isn't expensive. You could all club together and ask Brother Maurice, who's an ordained elder, to come and baptise you here in the UK. These logistical issues, I think, are not valid arguments or reasons.
Well, I don't know the logistical, so...
I'm not pointing
people.
blame on anybody. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to blame you or Brother Manjit or an elder or someone. I'm just saying the logistical issues aren't really there, because anyone is able to get onto a flight and fly to America at very little expense and get baptised. Because if they wanted to get married, they'd be spending a lot more money to do that. So I'm saying the logistical issues aren't really valid. The issue is a doctrinal one, and we should be getting baptised post-haste, as any person who has fallen in love with Christ would desire to do. And the third point is, for sure, it's a test, and we should be passing all of our tests before the close of probation. I don't mean any of that to tell anyone off. If that's what you think I'm doing, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm just saying there is no reason for delay.
So it is life and death.
Go read Romans 6, Romans 7. Of course it's life and death. Without water baptism, you can't enter into the gates of heaven.
Rebaptism is life and death.
Sorry?
Into the movement, rebaptism.
Yeah. It's a test. It's part of... Yes.
It's not an intellectual assent to the truth, to just partake of the message, as in coming here and agreeing and accepting.
That's for spiritual also.
Okay. I did.
Sealing is a settling into the truth. Do you want to say more?
Might sound a bit cheeky.
Sorry? Go ahead. Only Jeff can answer the cheeky ones.
Oh no, it's just kind of like a statement. What if you wanted a different day and wanted a particular person? Like you had a dream, and like you just wanted things to be.
I don't understand what.
She has a dream. She wants someone to baptise her on a special day.
Okay, so yeah.
I don't know. Pray to the Lord for it to happen. Joking aside, I empathise with that. People desire someone to, a particular person to marry them. It's not that uncommon. It's pretty common, should I say. It's not that unusual, that's what I meant to say.
It's not an excuse to put it up till November 10th.
Yeah, if you're all keen to get baptised, there's baptisms happening in Germany at the end of this month, for certain. That's convenient for us to get to.
Why can't we do the UK?
Sorry?
Why can't we do the UK?
Well, I'm just saying, what's already been planned, I don't know why they weren't planned here. I don't think they have a pool here to do it in the middle of winter. It's not that.
What about your garden?
As I said, there are certain things that need to be put into place. First of all, baptismal classes need to be held. I don't believe that they've been done. I'm not aware of them, and I'm normally aware of all the classes that have been organised and scheduled. Not all across the world, but most of the places. I know nothing has been arranged here in the UK, so that has to be done. As I say, if you wanted to have baptisms here, post haste, all you need to do is run some classes. Those people have gone through those classes, they've been accepted. Then you just need to ask Brother Maurice to come over and he'll baptise people. Sorry? I'm not here
No, when
until...
you come again.
Yeah, I'm here. The other option is if you have a preference, I'm here in June.
Yeah.
And then again we have another opportunity at the end of August in Germany again, at another camp meeting. So, Brother Maurice is available anytime. No, not anytime. He's not available any time next year because he's got a busy schedule himself. But you can negotiate a time period with him long before June. That is possible. I don't mean to put pressure on him. He's away. He's got his own responsibilities. I'm here in June. So there's December, June, and the end of August, which are definite dates. Anytime in between that, you can either fly somewhere. You can go any weekend to Arkansas. They have all the facilities there. They have a resident elder. You can go to France when Brother Maurice is there.
In June?
He's there before June.
I'll be waiting for you.
So there's various options, that's all I'm saying. Okay, so that was meant to be an easy question. Have I answered everyone's questions?
Thank you.
Everybody happy? Ish? Happy-ish? For some reason, the UK is an anomaly in today's movement. Let's all admit that and we'll move on. Things have not panned out well. Where else would you go in the world to experience what we're experiencing as of today? Nowhere. It's
unique.
It's unique, yeah. So everything's unique about the UK. Next question. Revelation 17 speaks about 1 hour. What kind of time is this hour? So this is Revelation 17:12. If you want to turn there. I'll read the question again. Turn to Revelation 17 verse 12. It says, we'll read the verse. And the 10 horns which thou sawest, the 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings, 1 hour with the beast. And the question is, what is this 1 hour in Revelation 17 verse 12? So, my current understanding of this 1 hour is that it's marking the history of Daniel 11 verse 41. So I don't know whose question this is. It's a French question. I don't know whose, but I think it is. I just didn't know it was a French question. Is it yours, Sister Sophie? So is that how you understand this 1 hour? It's the Sunday law history?
Yeah.
Yeah? So anybody else have a different view? I understand it to be Daniel 11 verse 41. So how long is this 1 hour? If you were to do regular time calculations, how long would this hour be? It would be 15 days. If you did a day for a year and you did run through the calculation, same calculation you do in Revelation chapter 9. I'm of the opinion, I don't think the Sunday law, verse 41, is 15 days. I think it's going to be a tad longer than that. I have no evidence to base that upon. Just, I think the logistics of, or the machinery of getting the politics of the world, or the governments of the world, to do whatever you want them to do, I think it's going to be a bit longer than 2 weeks. If we're expecting the things that we are anticipating, Revelation 20 verse 4, the bloodshed that's brought to view there, it seems to me it's a bit longer than the 2 week period, essentially, 15 days. So what is that 15, what is that 1 hour? If it's not 15 days, how are we calculating hours at the moment? Is there another mechanism, and is there another way? I'm not aware of one. I don't know if there is or isn't, but I've not been aware of that. So this 1 hour of Revelation 17, you can find in a number of different places, especially if you go to Revelation 18. So if you turn to Revelation 18, this same 1 hour, I would argue, which is why I asked Sister Sophie, is this the Sunday law period that she's referring to? Well, let me ask you if this is the same hour or not. Revelation 18, 10, 17 and 19. Maybe you'll argue that it's not the same hour, it's an hour afterwards. Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Verse 17, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company of ships and sailors, and as many as trade by the sea, stood afar off. Verse 19, and they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of their costliness, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. That was 10, 17 and 19, chapter 18. So this 1 hour in chapter 18, is it the same hour in chapter 17? Or is it another hour that follows?
There's the hour of temptation. And
Okay, so you think it's the hour that follows?
I'm just saying there's another hour.
That hence my question.
Yes.
Yes, hence my question. Because if you go to Revelation 3:10,
Yes.
Alan White's going to take Revelation 3:10 and plug it into early writing 277.2 and talk about this hour of temptation. Revelation 3:10, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. So I'm saying you've got 2 1 hour periods, and I'm arguing that they're back to back. This is the Sunday law, and I'll just say this,
Jacob's kind of trouble.
I'm going to call it the binding off or the harvest. The reason why I'm reticent to call it Jacob's time of trouble is because if this is Daniel 12:1, I don't think Jacob's time of trouble is the whole time period. But if we want to sort of generalise it, then I'll call it that. But I think the time of trouble comes in here. But the reason why I say that is because I think we now have evidence that in every dispensation, we can mark at least 5, the Sunday law history of the priests, the binding off of the priests, Levites, Nethinims, and this one here, the 144,000. Every single one of those dispensations has at least 2 waymarks that we are now identifying. So I don't know if we're all familiar with that concept or that idea. If you've watched Sister Tessie's presentations in Arkansas, she mentions these 2 waymarks in at least one, if not more than one, no, sorry, definitely more than one, in 3 of those dispensations, but she doesn't highlight both waymarks. She doesn't explicitly talk about them. There's a presentation that was done recently where in each one of those 5 dispensations, they're all marked, or as much as we know about them. So in this one, I'm saying, so this is slightly off subject, there's 2 waymarks, and you've heard Elder Jeff speak about the day and the hour of his coming. This is where this is taken from, and I'm identifying this as a cry. We could call it the midnight cry or the loud cry, and this is the death decree. It's not the actual implementation of it, it's the decree itself. So we've got 2 waymarks, and I'm suggesting that those 2 waymarks, we have, we can locate them. Some we know about, and some we're taken by line upon line methodology, that you can tag this into 5 dispensations, 5 back-to-back dispensations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this would begin 2014 and it would end in the second Advent. And there are 2 waymarks in each of those histories. We already know that as of, we're stating it confidently this year now. So some of them, as I say, we know, some of them we don't know. So this one is 2016-2018. This one is Lexington Concord, where you've got 273. We're expecting a loud cry there. This is 273. We're expecting a loud cry. This one we're not familiar with, but we know there's going to be a loud cry. And these 2 we know about, the death decree and the daily hour of the second Advent. So we know this one, this one. When I say we know these 2, at least we're expecting things to happen there. Again, we know a loud cry to happen, and we're familiar with 273. This one we know about, and these 2. It's this one here, which would be one here, that we're not familiar with. Was that too fast for everybody, or?
What's the one you know?
Sorry?
What's that one you know?
Which one? Tell me when to stop.
The one or the Sunday law, above?
That one.
Yeah.
Not in the one,
Yes.
what's the one we know?
So this one here is what we would call the loud cry. We know that one. It's this one that we don't know. The one that would precede it. Okay, maybe I'll address that slightly
Yeah,
slower.
because we don't know the study, so you're talking about something, but we don't where.
Okay,
we don't
so
understand.
if you've watched the studies of Sister Tess, you know 2016 and 2018.
Yeah.
We're all familiar with that. So that 16 and 18 are now being identified as waymarks in the Sunday law history, 2014 to 2019, or what we call raffia, close of probation, 2019. Just at a simple level, without the proof of it, I'm saying there are 2 waymarks in every single history, every one of these, what I'm calling dispensations. So that, at least that should be relatively straightforward, if that makes sense.
Are you saying there's 2 just because there's 2 in each of the other ones? So there has to be 2 in the other ones? Is that
Well, upon a testimony of 2 of the things established, and the ones I've ticked are the ones we know about.
okay?
So we've identified this one from Acts 27, the number 273. But before that it was even on the card, we knew that there should be a loud cry in this history here. This is Panium to the son-in-law. We knew there would be a loud cry, because that loud cry does what? It calls the Levites out of Laodicea into Ephesus. So we already knew there should be a loud cry there. Now we're identifying there's a second waymark, which is 273. What that means, we don't know. So I've put a tick there that we know something about that waymark, but we don't know anything, at least I don't know anything above that, about its characteristics, if that makes sense. So we know 2016 to 18 because we're experiencing that. We know these two, death decree and the cry, because they're already given to us in inspiration. We know that there's a loud cry in the son-in-law history. We don't know this one. There's no information for that, at least no study that I've seen done. We know this one here, Lexington Concord. We know this exists because at that battle, 273 British soldiers were killed. And so we can get 273 and tag it to this 273. The date that's been given for that is 2020. So all of this is from studies that Sister Tess has done. It's all in the public domain. So we know that, but we also know that there will be a cry that's made here, a loud cry if we want to use that phrase. So we already know that. And we know that this second tick here, 2018, is a loud cry. So we've got loud cries in every single dispensation. We should expect to see that. What we're identifying is that there is a secondary waymark, which I guess we're saying with some degree of certainty now, because on the testimony two, I think, is established. Hopefully that makes sense. Sorry? What bit is going over your head?
I think I didn't catch when the line started.
2014 to 2019.
Oh, I mean, what made you draw the second line, the secondary line?
I'm saying, even if you don't understand the why I've done it, does it make sense that we've got two waymarks in every history?
No.
If we've got two waymarks in this history, you know that. 2016, 2018.
Yeah, I understand, but I
Okay, you understand that one. And you understand this one. There's the death decree, and then there's a voice that comes from heaven that says, the day and the hour of Christ's coming. So you've got two there. So you're okay with that?
Yeah.
The whole Midnight Cry study was created or started from the number 273 from Acts 27, and it was placed in this history because after midnight there was a cry made before they landed the ship upon the coast. And so that 273 was a waymark that was put here. And then it was, a second witness was given to that from the date 273 BC. So then a structure was formed. So that waymark there, 273, was established. Then, in this history here, we have, as I say, these waymarks, and this waymark here of 2016, what waymark is that? What would it parallel in Millerite history? If you're familiar with Sister Tessie's study. You've got to shout out if you're going to say something, I don't know what. This is Concord. So I heard someone say that. Concord. August the 1st. So if that's Concord, then we know that there was a battle, the War of Independence between the United States and Great Britain, which was called the Lexington Concord Battle. So we can place that here, the Lexington Concord Battle, and through some parallel lines, that can be established as being 2020. And in that battle, 273 soldiers died. So that 273 is going to be tagged to this 273 and going to be tagged to 2016 because of Concord. Concord, 273, 273. So that's how those lines are being confirmed or established.
With the 220 then, the 2020, we don't know what that is.
What that is?
Do we know what that event is between Raffrey and Parminder, the 273, when you're saying from other lines we can establish it's 2020?
Yeah, but I can't remember what that event was, what that event was. I don't have it in the forefront of my mind now.
Okay.
So what you're missing
Now just because
now?
I think
after-
I was just zoned out, and then I just saw the line. So
Okay, so you're blaming me, and then I think you're not listening.
yeah,
Okay.
So that's what I just wanted to know.
Okay, sister.
Yeah.
This was not part of the question, by the way, but
There's
Which
a gap,
one?
There's a gap between Sunday law and
That
Saturday.
one?
No, that moving.
oh, this is close to probation.
Okay.
Then you 12 one.
So going back to that, so the logic is, so you drew the second line because on the top line there's 2 waymarks in between.
The logic is this, that for a long time, we've not considered the loud cry to be an independent separate waymark. Matthew 25 verse 6 doesn't allow you to do that. At midnight there was a cry made, it's a singular event. But we've understood for around 3 years now that they become 2 events, midnight and midnight cry, separate events, July and August. And therefore, we've been we've had to confront the reality that the loud cry is a separate, unique waymark. In the history of the priest, it's 4 years from the Sunday law, which tells you, it's not just a minor separate waymark. There's a lot of history between them. So we can predict now, when the Sunday law happens here, there'll be a separate, unique, distinct event here, which we call the loud cry. What happens between the Sunday law and the loud cry, it would be speculation for me to guess what that would be. But if it's anything like our line, not much. But it may not be as eventless then as it is now, because maybe we've got our act together a bit more, and we'll be a bit more attuned to what's going on. But they're certainly separate waymarks. So we knew that a long while ago. We've been teaching that, I've been teaching that for at least 18 months, longer, that the loud cry is a separate waymark. Now we have seen that 2016 is a separate and distinct waymark. It becomes a waymark in our line. And we can identify that as being Concord from the Millerite line. So it's not some abstract waymark that we just created. And then once we realise that, you can go back into this history and you can realise there was a death decree here. So once you see the death decree, you know that there are 2 waymarks in the binding off period, or Jacob's time of trouble. So it's not only in Jacob's time of trouble, it's the death decree that initiates Jacob's time of trouble.
So great controversy would also give you that top line.
We always should be going back to a Spirit of Prophecy quote and read it in its original context before we make application. I can't stress that enough. If you don't do that, you're on dangerous ground. And I tried to demonstrate that earlier today when we read that Spirit of Prophecy quote, how we approach that quote. Most people attempted to approach it in a wrong way. Yep. So, by the way, I'm not going to show it, but I just want to let you know that we've got 2 dispensations before this, have we not? Everybody agree with that? Before 2014, there's 2 dispensations. What we would call the ploughing and the former rain. In the ploughing and the former rain, you're going to see, again, 2 waymarks in each of those histories. One of them we already know. The loud cry, which would be what day? A date between 9/11 and 2014, which would serve as a cry. If you're not sure, what have we done in 2018, which we studied today, which people have called PBM, prediction of something. So we know from 2001, 2014, there was an event, a year, that we predicted something was going to happen in the future.
2012.
That's 2012. So you know there's one waymark there, so we should expect a waymark that comes before that 2012 waymark. And that would be, I'm suggesting, 2008. So you've got 2008, 2012, you go back to the history from 1989 to 9/11, and again you'd be expecting to see 2 waymarks.
Why 2008?
Sorry?
Why 2008?
Good question. 2008, I'm suggesting because there was a financial collapse in 2008. As an external event, one of the most major financial collapse. I think it was even bigger, or as big as, or slightly bigger than 1929, which we normally mark as the financial collapse that, you know, that shook the world. In 2008, the world almost melted down if President Obama, who everybody kind of knocks, hadn't intervened and sorted the mess out.
Why have
Sorry?
we not?
Bush.
Oh, Bush.
Why have we not carried the logic through of just having external events all in those lines, or are they all external? This is just my ignorance. Are they all? So 2008 was definitely an external event with the financial crash. But are all of those?
2012 is an external event.
What's he saying?
Why they're not all external events? 2012 is one of the most major external events that we're talking about now currently in our movement. Cambridge Analytica moved from the UK to the United States and began engaging in info wars, if you want to simplify that. 2001 external event, 2008 external event, 2012 external event, 2014, 16, 18.
There's over both though, isn't there?
There's an internal event in 2008. Is that what we're looking for? It's the beginning of the shaking in London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was asking external, that's why.
Oh, external.
I think he was asking external. Yeah. Okay, so
So is there always both?
Yeah, I think so.
I want to be careful. All the ones that I've seen, I think there are always there's been both. Some of the ones we are not 100% sure about, but when we start looking, I think we can find them. We don't see them in the Millerite history, though. I think I would say a lot of those waymarks are all internal. I think it doesn't have the same characteristics as our reform line. April doesn't, as far as I'm aware. July doesn't. August doesn't. All the major waymarks in the Millerite line. October doesn't. They're not external waymarks. Not big ones anyway. I've not been able to find if they were, they'd be obscure. Coming back to the question that what is this 1 hour? I think it's symbolic. I think it's symbolic time. I don't know. I don't think it's some literal time span that we can calculate. Because if it was, then this time period would be the same as this time period. And then you'd get into a bigger problem, because if you went to Matthew 20, which is the parable of the labourers in the vineyard, you start seeing these workers coming in at various times during the day. And this is where we pick up this phrase, the 11th hour workers. If you're all familiar with that, the 11th hour would be this, and this would be the 12th hour. Hence you get this 1 hour, and after that no man can work. And that would, if you're going to make that 1 hour into some kind of time frame, you're going to have to do the same with all the preceding hours as well, I would think. I think it's the 6th and the 9th hour. And I think there's one more before that, the 3rd, perhaps. So, we'd have to make all of those some kind of literal time if you were doing that. So I don't know how we would get that to work, Ms. Rema.
I'm just wondering, so because you asked, is there any way we can interpret that hour? We seem to be doing that with Revelation 9. I don't know if there's any connection with that hour. We're making that 6 months, we're making it a half, we're making it different things, and I'm wondering if there's some connection, because these hours are labelled by Revelation, whether there's some connection between those thoughts.
Yeah, so you'd have to say 1 hour is 15 days, so 15 days are going to be...
6 months, because we're making it 6 months in other applications.
So you're going to make it 15 days, 150 days, which is 6 months. So if that kind of comes up, I guess it may do, then these would both be 6 month periods. I don't know.
So as Paddy and that would be the 9th hour, you're saying?
I can't remember off the top of my head,
You're not
but
giving us the 6th hour?
I don't want to venture to say it off the top of my head.
But you say there's an hour that fits in within them slots?
Yeah, if you go to Matthew 20, it talks about that. It goes out at the 6th and 9th hour. And I think the 6th and 9th hour we mark as Raphia and Panium.
And so Revelation 18, the hour is it then between, is that after Daniel 12:1?
That's why I was asking what people thought about that. If they're marking Revelation 18 that hour or this hour.
Yeah. Well, has Revelation 18:4 is the come out of her my people? So I was maybe thinking it could be in the Sunday law, and when there's still close of probation, there's things are happening there.
That's how I've understood that verse, but I'm open to correction on that.
What verse?
Sorry?
What verse?
He said he went to Revelation 18 verse 4, which is here, saying, come out of her my people, is that what you're saying? Because judgment's about to happen. And then when you get to verse 10, 17 and 18, alas for the great city Babylon, which that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. So it seems to me that within 1 hour the judgment has come, because you've been reigning for an hour. But I'm open.
In the time period of the stones, we dealt with that hour, and if you haven't ever looked at it, there's only one book in the Old Testament where the word hour is employed. It's in the book of Daniel. And you can pretty much take all the places where an hour is expressed in the New Testament and plug it into that history that you're pointing to. But in the book of Daniel, it says in that very hour, a hand appeared right on the wall. It's always talking about judgment. But my point is in the New Testament, when it says, in that hour, do not worry about the words you're going to use because it will be given to you. I think it has to be symbolic, because even though it is the Sunday law time period, the promises for that hour would have to also apply for the priests when they get to Raphia, I would think. So it's got to be symbolic of the testing time that it represents. I think I'd have a difficult time personally putting it up as a period of time, because it's got to cover from Raphia onward.
If I understand you correctly, if we're saying that this is an hour, this is the Sunday law period, and we're going to define it as some kind of calculated time, 15 days, 150 days, 6 months, something like that, some kind of, then would it not be the same calculation for each of the Sunday law periods?
Right.
Which would then mean that every single period would be 5 years. So all of these periods would be 5, 10, 15, 20, and we know that's an hour, so it'd be a 25-year history. Or we'd have to have a different rule for each dispensation. Does everybody understand that?
Yeah, but what I'm saying, what I'm referencing about the book of Daniel, which is the only book in the Old Testament that uses the word hour. I don't remember, I think it's maybe 5 times that it's in the book of Daniel, perhaps.
5 times.
And it's always representing judgment that is taking place. It's not representing a period of time. It's using the word hour as some type of adjective for the judgment that's being illustrated. So I don't think it's literal time. I think it's, I don't know how to say that.
Simple. Why Panium can be the second coming. So,
we didn't take a picture of that and you erased it.
I'll take a screenshot.
Or did.
Okay, erase it. Aaron's gonna save you.
So, why is Panium the second coming? So, I'm going to try and discuss this in a bit more of a formal fashion in one of the presentations. But if we did 89, 9/11, Sunday law, close of probation, and second advent, and we had the ploughing, the former rain, the latter rain, and harvest. You remember today I said that I just put 3 waymarks here as an example, and I said this was 14, 18, and 19, and that would be Sunday law, loud cry, and close of probation. Then you would have a fourth one, which would be the second advent here, and this would be Panium. If we were to do that, then I've given the logic, hopefully that made sense to you, that these are just steps, but the creation of those steps was done in a very unique and special way, because you can't just create information from nothing. And we've created it through an understanding of patterns, which are fractals. So not only are they just steps, they have this special property attached to them, which pick up characteristics of these waymarks. So when you do that, this is why Panium becomes the second advent. So just conceptually, that's what the structure teaches. So let me make this suggestion and tell me what you think about that. We know at the second advent that people are going to see Christ coming on the cloud. They're going to see this glorious being who's not only coming on the cloud, which is one imagery, he's also coming on a horse to make war and to make battle, if you're happy with that kind of a concept. Is that right? Is that good? Yeah, he comes with a white garment that I think is stained with blood, and he's coming to make war. He's riding a horse. So, if you're okay with that idea, I'm saying at Panium, when it talks about the second advent here, what's being identified is Christ is coming. And if you remember when we spoke about Isaiah 28, verse 7 and verse 9, where we had priest and prophet, and then you have to fill in the blanks, and I'm saying the blanks would be priest and prophet, and people chastise us because I say we're prophets, and they say, you know, who do you think you are to make such assertion? And I'm saying, well, that was the benign title. The toxic title is priest, which everybody seems to accept, like it's okay to say that. And I'm saying the reason why that's much more of a potent symbol is because what kind of priesthood is this? People have missed the point that we're not allowed to be priests. It's illegal. And so therefore we're the priests after the order of Melchizedek. So you pick that point up, and the reason why people don't accept that is because Melchizedek was Christ. I'm not saying he was Christ in the story of Abraham, but Christ becomes Melchizedek. He picks up that order. So I'm saying when it says Christ is coming, this is the same problem that people have with Daniel 2. Daniel 2, the stone that gets cut out of the mountain, our church teaches it's whom? Christ. And why did they say that? Because the people who is symbolized by that stone look so much like Christ, if you looked at them, you couldn't tell the difference, if you're okay with that analogy. So I'm saying the second advent here is the lifting up or the rising up of Christ as he goes to make battle in the next phase of the warfare, if I can say it that way. And who is that Christ that's coming now to make battle at Panium, the second advent? Who would that be? Sorry? It's the priest, because that's all there's no one else around. Because this was Panium, this is Raphia, and this is 2014. You can go back and back. So this is the priests that have walked all through this history. They've gone through a harvest, they've been bound off, and now they're ready to do what? To make battle. And that battle is basically evangelism. They're going now to make war. If I say this, people are going to misunderstand what I mean. So I'll say it anyway and I'll get into trouble. They're going to go make war with the Adventist church. Because what they're going to do from the church is steal the Levites from them. And so this second coming is not just a structural phenomena, it's actually an experience that we're going to see And that Christ's coming is when people look at us, we wouldn't call it Christ's coming. What would the Millerites call it? They'd call it the living testimony. And Ellen White says something along this line, that people are going to accept the message not through arguments, because the arguments have already been made, but based upon what? Based upon when they look at the people, they're going to see essentially Christ shining through them. Now, I've put here this second Advent here, Pallium, but it's a different waymark for the Levites and then also for the world. They represent different things. But I'm saying what this is symbolising is the rising up or the raising of the priest. We'd use it in the terms of the ensign is being lifted up. You can conceptualise it that way. So it's not only structurally there, but I think philosophically you can make an argument, or doctrinally you can make an argument. Brother Aaron, you had your hand up ages ago and I forgot. I'm sorry. It's okay?
I don't even think it was relevant. It's just that you were asking what Sister Tess places at 2020.
Oh, yes.
The counter-revolution.
Oh, that's it, yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, yeah, I've brought that up. It's counter-revolution. So hopefully that answers that question. Should we take the next one for tomorrow? Is it late?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, so we'll do the next one for tomorrow.
I just have a small point.
You go ahead.
I see how in some quotes, and I think it's God delivers his people, just before Christ's coming, he tells them the day and hour, and he links that with the covenant and how their face shines like Moses. Is that going to be at Hanium or before? 'Cause I know
What, when our faces shine with glory, when the day and the hour is given?
Yeah.
No, that's happening right now. That's this waymark we're living now. You haven't looked at yourself in the mirror lately, obviously.
I actually did yesterday.
And?
Felt like
What's that? No, I think this was what I was alluding to earlier today. We're at the waymark and it doesn't look like what we expected.
No, I'm trying to link it with the living testimony.
I know you are, but I'm saying you're picking the wrong waymark. It's already here. In this dispensation, then as you go through, you can see it in the other dispensations.
Does it get brighter?
Because it's, and she also links it to a covenant. So yeah.
I'm more inclined to say things are happening today, but we just look at each other and everything looks normal, and we look like, you know, we're struggling people, or the movement's not doing well, whatever it is, sort of this negativity. But the lines teach this is all positive. Everything is good. Everything's in order, yes. Correct?
I said the good news I've been asking you about.
Amen. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and your mercy. We want to ask and pray for a special blessing upon us. Please guide us and give us wisdom and understanding, not only on the prophetic studies that we're doing, but that we might handle these truths in a righteous and honourable fashion, and that as we engage with those who challenge us, those who confront us, that we might give a reason and a proper answer for the faith in which we believe in. Lord, people have asked for baptism. I want to ask that the conviction strengthens in their hearts and in their minds, that we as an organisation would facilitate that work to be done in a manner that would honour and glorify your name. Lord, you know the desires of each and every one of our hearts. We know that we represent families, some of who are in pain, in hardship, in trouble, in various ways, maybe emotionally, physically, even financially. Lord, you know all of our heartaches, but we have come here to this camp meeting to put those things aside and to fellowship with you, and also to one another, so that we can strengthen the bonds of love that we need to help us to get through this coming year. Please be with us and please guide us. Give us rest, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.